What about your situation, Sol? Will you be staying at Tottenham?
Hello, Sol Campbell is a legend. Welcome to our YouTube channel. This is our first video. It's also the first. It's a preview this week to the North London Derby. It's the first one of the season. It's also the first North London Derby since we've started this podcast. We've got a couple of guests on to preview this week. From Arsenal, we've got Lee Judges, who's best known for his appearances on Arsenal Fan TV, along with a couple of other podcasts. And yeah, he does that. He kind of advertises himself there.
And we've got a fellow Yudo in Jason McGovern, from best known from the Last Word on Spurs podcast. Coming up after this, I guess. Yeah.
So yeah, we've got them to discuss the North London Derby. So here they are.
Here we go. Another interview this time with Lee Judges from Arsenal Fan TV, is where you're most known. Other podcasts as well you feature on. Let's start with we're here to talk about the derby, obviously. But you've got to start with last week's performance, and which, as a Spurs fan, I enjoyed. I should say I'm the Spurs fan. You'll see over there is the Arsenal fan.
No.
What for you? What went wrong in the Liverpool game?
I thought we played well up until they scored. If I'll be honest, I felt that we was in the game, and people have been slagging off the tactics and things like that. But I thought they was all right, and maybe personnel could have been a little bit different. But I thought we was in the game. We created a couple of chances, but as soon as they scored, that was it. And I thought, for me, I was a little bit disappointed with Emery that he didn't change the game plan at half time, and certainly then at 2-0 he still didn't do nothing till it was 3-0, and then we sort of got back in the game. But listen, Liverpool's not an easy place to go at the best of times. So as much as I'm disappointed that we didn't win, Sunday certainly helped us a little bit out with other results, and if you look at it from what we're looking to achieve this season, Manchester United and Spurs losing at home to Crystal Palace and Newcastle respectively, we have to say that was unexpected. It was expected that we'd lose to Liverpool. So all in all, it could have been a worse weekend than it turned out to be.
Yeah, but in that game, Emery and in the first few games of the season, he's playing a lot of the youngsters. I don't know if you noticed, like Willock started every game, Guendouzi's been playing, Nelson's played a few. Do you think it's good that these youngsters are coming through right now, or do you think they're not proven enough? And would you start them against Spurs in the derby?
Well, that's a good question, whether you start them or not. I'm quite pleased that they've been given the opportunity, really. And I'm also, I have to say, I felt that Willock was again our best midfield player. And I'd like to see him play. I've got a little feeling that Emery's going to go for experience on Sunday, but I'd like to see him up against Harry Winks to see what he could do against him, because I've been very impressed with Willock, if I'll be honest. But I think, it's a tough one. People have been saying you've got to bring Torreira back in. So if you bring Torreira back in, it is out of Willock and Xhaka who's going to be left out, because I think that Ceballos will play because we're at home. So it's a very, very... I think it'd be harsh to leave out Willock, if I'll be honest, but I would certainly go with him because he's got the energy and the legs around the midfield. So it's a real difficult question. I'll be very, very interested to see the team on Sunday. I think that it goes without saying that the three up front have got to play. But that midfield, and I also think central defence has got to come up for question as well. I've not been happy with Socrates. I'll be honest, but is he better than what we've got? Well, that's the thing. It's again another tough decision to make if you're going to put Chambers in there up against Harry Kane, who, love him or loathe him, is a top player and always scores against Arsenal. So it's we've got to keep him quiet. So I think that's going to be a key as well, really. But I'd love to see Willock play, but I've just got a sneaky feeling that he's not going to play because of the opposition.
So Socrates, who personally I've been saying is a liability for a while. Lots of Arsenal fans have disagreed with me. But there's the new man who came in last week, obviously, came in the first week, but last week had his sort of standout performance, I would say. Do you think that for all Arsenal's problems last year in defence, do you think that David Luiz is the solution to these problems?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know, I have to say that. I think that, listen, he played very, very well first half, you know, and he was outstanding against Burnley. And if he does anything like he did at Anfield against you lot, then he's going to be hung, drawn and quartered, because he just cannot be looking to do that against them. I personally think that these are sort of games that David Luiz thrives in these sort of games. So I expect him to do well. I like him as a defender. There's something about him that I like, but there is that element of just stupidity in his game, and that is a worry. And you know, it sort of showed against Liverpool because it was a stupid thing to do. But you know, he is a good player. Is he the answer to Arsenal's problems? Well, no, but as he shored us up a little bit, yes, and that tells you a bigger story, because David Luiz has improved our defence, and that just shows you how vulnerable that it was, you know.
It seems like he's quite composed on the ball. So, like, for a team that's trying to play out the back, like we did against Liverpool, he seemed to be the right man there. I don't know if you think, like, the way Emery's trying to build a team, that he is the right man there, and he's going to take time to get used to playing alongside other defenders, which is something difficult. Lots of defenders take time to learn, but do you think, just so far on what you've seen, his composure and maybe not his defensive quality, but do you think he has the potential to gel into a back four and start every week, and could potentially challenge for the league in the next couple of seasons, or do you think he's never going to be able to be that for Arsenal?
No, I don't think that. I think that, I'll be honest, lads, I think that if Koscielny would have stayed, we probably wouldn't have signed David Luiz. You know, I think that he is a replacement for Koscielny. I also think that we've got probably looking for another central defender. Maybe we'll take one of those Spurs ones, because they seem to be unhappy at the moment. Like, you know, so somebody like that we need. You know, but what he does bring to the table is he definitely has got a bit of experience, a bit of leadership quality. You know, and I also think he's got a little bit of skullduggery. You know what I mean? He does hit a few things in there, and I think that we've lacked that a little bit. You know, he was brilliant against Burnley, and let's not. When people turn around and say, "Oh, it's only Burnley," them two forwards are a handful for anybody. You know, and if they'd have won on Sunday at Wolves, who were a very good side, Wolves, as we all know, particularly at Molineux, they would have been third in the league. So that would have been a tough, you know. So let's not, you know, disrespect Burnley that much. I think that they've got two strong forwards. He's got to get into the face of Harry Kane and try and bully him. I'll be honest, that is not going to be easy, because, you know, I think with Harry Kane, he's got a very, very good temperament. But you know, ultimately, I see him, you know, being involved in the squad for the next couple of years. But I think that, you know, like, it might even be good for Holding that somebody like that comes along and just gives him that, you know, bit of experience. You know, Chambers and Holding are good young central defenders, but they're learning off of Mustafi. You know, where you look at Sanchez at Tottenham, he's learning off of two very, very good central defenders. You know, and I think that maybe, you know, he might help those younger players come through.
So when we think it's this time of year again, it's the derby season. When you think of the derby, what was your favourite match? What is your favourite memory, let's say, from Arsenal Spurs over the years?
Whoa, there's been loads. Listen, I can go back to I think it was 1976 when Liam Brady scored at White Hart Lane in a 5-0 win. You know, and I can tell you, I was on the end. I was at White Hart Lane when Spurs beat us 5-0. But the best games are obviously like in '87 when we beat Spurs in the semi-final with David Rocastle scoring the winner in the last minute. It was a fantastic one. More recently, I'd have to say, Sol Campbell's last game for Spurs when in the FA Cup when in fact, I think Spurs took the lead, didn't they? 1-0. I think it was Doherty. I think that's against a run of play, and then we just run right, and Patrick Vieira and Robert Perez scored. So that was a great game, semi-final. There's been, like Thierry Henry when he ran from the halfway line was a good one. And of course, I have to say the last few, the 5-2 ones have been fantastic. And last season's one, because let's not be, we've got to be honest as being Arsenal fans. Tottenham were favourites for that game, and all the Spurs fans were going to the Emirates saying that they were going to win comfortably. And not only was it a great result for us, but it was a great performance as well, and a great game. So, but look, we've been on some difficult times with Spurs as well, some tough times. The semi-final, where Gaza scoring in 91 that stopped us winning the double was tough to take. We was a very, very good side. So for Tottenham to stop us doing that was tough. We was very, very fortunate being Arsenal fans that we only had to wait 2 years, or was it 2 years before we had that revenge at Wembley again, because we'd have never heard the bloody last of it like you lot on that one. But then some difficult one. The one at Emirates when we lost, we was 2-0 up and lost 3-2 was a tough one. So and over the last few seasons at White Hart Lane, it's got tougher and tougher, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Well, moving on to this week's game, do you think Arsenal are going to win? Do you think we're going to win?
Well, listen, I always say this, that home advantage is a big thing in the North London Dubs. I do believe that. If we're at home, I'd always back Arsenal. But if it's at Spurs, I'm always, I bite your hand off for a draw. So I do think that Arsenal have the advantage because it's at home. Is it a good time to be taking on Spurs? Listen, for the first time in 2-3 seasons, there's slight crack shame with the Spurs at this moment in time, with the sort of like players wanting to leave and a bit of in-house fighting and everything like that. So it's a great time to take them on. But from Tottenham's point of view, they're looking at, if anything can gel them together, reignite the team, is to play a North London derby. So I wouldn't, like people are turning around and say that Arsenal are going to roll over Spurs. I'd love it if that would happen, but I can't see it. I think that the problems that Spurs have got are more of us when they're trying to break teams down, not so much their defending. I thought, like they've gone to Manchester City and got a point, against a run of play, but at the end of the day, they've still gone up there and defended decently to stop that. So listen, it's going to be really, really tough. If I was a betting man, I would say Arsenal, just only on the fact that we're at home and at the Emirates. So,
as a Spurs fan, we sort of say that the derby matters way more for when we lose it. For you, how important is it for Arsenal? Is it season defining, or is it just another game? How important is it for Arsenal to win the derby?
Never, ever. I defy anybody to say that an Arsenal Spurs game is just another game. It's never ever been that. Even the League Cup tie last season, I think it didn't really matter if you won or lost because everyone was going for it. But it still hurts when you lose. I was still gutted when we lost that game. So no, I don't think it. I think it's very, very important to the Arsenal fans. Look, it's what I think's been great about the North London. And I'll be honest with you, like when Arsenal were going for the leagues and that, Tottenham were just like a pain because it was a free hit to hinder Arsenal. And we'd always win at home, and then it would be a battle at White Hart Lane, and they might draw up one or two of those games. But then Tottenham have really improved now, and to the face where I think that it is win. If you win the game, it's great. If you lose the game, it's devastating for the implications of what both teams want to achieve now. I do believe that. We're both. I'll be honest. As good as Spurs have been over the last few years, we're not challenging for the title. Manchester City and Liverpool are too far ahead of of both teams, if I'll be honest, and you can see the faults of both teams, why that's happening. But in the face of it, I still, I put down in my predictions at the beginning of the season that Spurs would come third. I'm not going to change that mindset at this moment because we're only 3 games in. Spurs are capable of going on a run. I do, as much as I don't like Spurs, their defence, it always impresses me. They're a tough nut to crack. And I feel now that the implications, look, Arsenal can go 5 points clear of Spurs at this stage of the season. As an Arsenal fan, you'd be biting your hand off that. And if you was a Spurs fan, you'd be biting your hand off at that and all. So to give one of your rivals a 5-point start after 3 games, that's not good. So there's a little bit of pressure on Spurs not to lose this game. I think Spurs, if you be honest, I think Spurs would say, we'll take a draw now. I know that you can't say that with what's going to happen, but I think that if Spurs come out of it a draw, they wouldn't be too disappointed.
Well, last season we had a similar sort of game where, like, early on in the season, we obviously won the first derby comfortably, it felt, and I felt like after that game we got a bit ahead of ourselves. And we kind of just thought, this is easy. Spurs are nowhere near. And then in the end of the season, obviously, we came behind them. Do you think there's the possibility of this happening again? If we do win, and same for Spurs, because they're not in the best position right now. And if Spurs were to win, they might get ahead of themselves.
Well, that's a good question. I think that hopefully Arsenal have learnt some lessons. And Emery has learnt some lessons, you can have a great game at Spurs and then go and lose to a Crystal Palace or not beat Brighton at home and things like that. So I think that it is 3 points. It is another game from that perspective, but it's more than that. But I hope that if Arsenal win it, that it's the only thing which is a little bit disappointing from probably both sides. If whoever wins the game, is that you've then got the international break, so the momentum won't carry on. So I think that may be a key. I think that I think that it'll be a tough. I think that both teams and both managers are experienced enough to not let that happen. From Spurs' point of view, I think that they're going to. What happens after this game? If they do lose it, and this pray that they do, but if they do, they can dust themselves down afterwards because the transfer window will be shut and they can regroup and go again. And even though they're rivals and everything like that, they've got some quality players. You can't deny them that. And they're capable of going and beating anybody. So I don't think Spurs will crumble in any shape or form. I think that whatever happens, I think they've got a very, very good manager. I think probably pound for pound, the best in the Premier League, if I'll be honest, with the resources and everything that he's got. So I think that the only problem that I would say from Spurs, obviously I know a few Spurs and a few mates and all that. I was talking to a few of them today that they just feel that maybe Pochettino just seems like he's not happy at the moment, moaning and about a few things that. So I don't know what's going on there, but I think once the the transfer window shuts, the international break comes, I think Spurs will come again. So that's why I think it's key while they're in this little bit of a rut that we take advantage of it.
So can we nail you down to a score prediction?
You nail me down. I think that Spurs will score. There's no two ways about that. And then it'll probably be Harry Kane. So, but I think it'd be a tough, very, very close 2-1 win for Arsenal. I think that we might just nick it, as I said, but going on the facts of home advantage. But listen, whatever result it will be, it wouldn't surprise me. It's a North London derby. I've been to enough in my time, experienced them. You just don't know what's going to happen. So, to predict, if you get a prediction of a North London derby right, you're a better man than me.
Well, it's the first North London derby this year with VAR. Expecting it to play a big part. It's been Spurs' best player so far.
Yeah, well, that's why not? It probably will do. I'm not a fan of it, if I'll be honest. I think there's some good things in it, but too many controversial things at the moment. But it could well play a part. Let's hope that VAR is an Arsenal fan this week, because it's certainly been a Tottenham fan over the last few. Well, certainly against Manchester City, it has, isn't it? My God, like, you know what I mean? I've had the things over them over the last few times. So it'd be interesting to see. Hopefully, let's be honest, boys. We don't really want VAR to get involved and make a controversial game, if I'll be honest.
All right. So the man whose name is in the podcast, Sol Campbell. Obviously, as a Spurs fan, I have probably radically different perspective on him. What is your perspective on Sol Campbell?
Well, I don't know if you're a Spurs fan, you can have that as the podcast. So you're a bigger man than me on that part. I have to say. Listen, I think from an Arsenal fan point of view, we love Sol, because it's not only that he turned over to he come onto the good side, but it didn't cost us any money. He went for a free, and you know what I mean. I think that's probably what gets the Spurs fans more than anything. If we'd have parted with 15 million, I think they would have been a little bit more. Well, I don't think they've ever been friendly to him, but a little bit more less forgiving than what they are now. But he come into our side. Now, I will say this about Sol Campbell: he replaced the best centre half and legend that Arsenal Football Club's ever had in Tony Adams, and he wasn't missed. You know, and that says so much about how good Sol Campbell was, because even to this day, people say, "Oh, we miss Patrick Vieira, we miss that," but no one actually ever said, "Oh, we miss Tony Adams," because Sol Campbell came in and was immense. And I think that he was the sort of player that needed to replace Tony Adams, if you know what I mean. And he was good enough, big enough, and strong enough to be able to take those boots and fill them off, if I'll be honest.
So do you value club loyalty?
Yeah, of course, you know. And listen, it was listen, we're laughing about it and smile about it, but would we like that to ever happen to us? No, you know what I mean. Like we've let you have people like Jamie Horror, players like that. We've never let you have our best player, you know, and you know, you've given us Willie Young over the times, you know what I mean, that played, you know, Pat Jennings you give us. But funny enough, with Pat Jennings, he never got any hate at all about going over to Arsenal. So it doesn't happen very often. Listen, I understand why Spurs fans are bitter about it. You know, it's not very nice when Arsenal fans say, you know, there's a caption out this week in it, like, you know what I mean, like Sol Campbell left Tottenham to win the league at White Hart Lane, so he signed for Arsenal, you know what I mean, and things like that. And the songs that go with it. As a Spurs fan, you'd be very, very bitter. My brother's a Spurs fan, and he's like you. He ain't got no time for Sol. They don't even drink their beer, Sol beer, because they're bitter, you know what I mean? So,
do you think something of his magnitude, like, if you think about it, it was the club captain, he was their best player. Do you think something like that ever could come close to happening again between Arsenal and Spurs? Either way, Spurs to Arsenal, Arsenal to Spurs?
well, I can't see it. I think that there is a certain thing that if you was a player of Spurs now or a player of Arsenal and you actually seen what sort of stick he took and all that, I think it may think twice. You know, look at Robin van Persie. He went to Man United and what he gets, and so I think players probably wouldn't want to go through what he went through. If I'll be honest, you have to ask a couple of things. You know, if you was a player, what I would talk about I would actually say that, you know, when you're playing for that team and that youth team, and when he moved to Arsenal, all affinity with Spurs has gone. You know, and he must have had some sort of loyal, you know, feelings for Spurs, because you come up through the youth ranks. Every player that you talk to professionally has always got a soft spot for the team that they started to give them their chance. So it must be very, very hard. Even someone like Robin Van Persie knows that when he goes to the Emirates, he's going to have no love whatsoever for what he ever done before it. And I think, Sol could never, ever, it's like, I know a few people that play like for the Arsenal legends or the Spurs legends, you know what I mean? It's just no way that Sol Campbell could ever go and play for the Spurs legends or anything like that ever again, So it was a very, very big decision for him to do what he done. And would I see it happening again? It's like, there's always a talk about, Toby again was, got this 25 million clause, but does he really want the grief of doing that? I don't think so. So I think I'll be very, very surprised if anything like that happened again.
All right, so let's wrap this up now. Thank you to Lee for coming on.
No problem.
Thank you.
Wish you a belated happy birthday for yesterday.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And
All
good
right.
luck with your show and all that,
Thank you very much.
You're well, So a good combination, Arsenal and Spurs, you know what I mean? So you must be good mates to put up with each other,
Hopefully the combination ends up with a Spurs win on Sunday.
Wow, well, that's what you say. We're going to go down the other line, So.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Have a lovely weekend, guys. Yeah.
You too.
You too.
All right. So next up now, we've got an interview with Jason McGovern. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on today.
No problem, mate.
All right, let's get right into it. The match we had on the last Sunday. Now it's been a while. We've been getting over it. What do you, in your opinion, what went wrong in that Newcastle game? Let's start with that.
Pretty much, we kicked off, and from that moment on, everything went wrong, didn't it? It was a shocker, wasn't it? Let's be fair. Nothing right. The tempo wrong. So much negative, sideways football. Ridiculous goal to concede. Lack of any spark. Lack of atmosphere in the stadium. It was one of those days where, let's be fair, there was no positives to take, isn't there? There was just an awful game, and I can't actually think of a better game to try and bounce back in than the one we've got this weekend. But that was a painful watch last week, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's very, very, very true. I mean, for you though, what was the reason? Did you think it was bad defensive problems, or it was players who are like out of contract, such as Christian Eriksen? Christian Eriksen, he came on in the game, played a little bit deeper. What do you think Spurs should do with?
I think it's just a
contracts are expiring.
It's a really difficult,
and yeah,
it's a difficult situation, isn't it? I mean, if you look at it, it's a player that's openly said he wants to leave. It's a player that most fans wanted left out the side last season because his head's been turned and he doesn't beat the first corner and his free kicks aren't great. So you come into this season, and when a player wants to leave, to me, you try and do a deal, but if the clubs that he wants to join won't come in and buy him, you're kind of stuck in limbo land. And I think, if I'm picking the strongest Spurs side on paper, Christian Eriksen's always in it in front of Eric Lamela. But I look at it from the manager's point of view, and you think one's a player that wants to leave, one's a player that's committed, and you're probably going to need to rely on for the next 6 months. You look at last week, Eriksen's anonymous at Manchester City. Lamela doesn't have a great game, but he still scores one and makes the other goal. So if I take football out of it and I relate it to another business, you'd be going with a person that's committing themselves to you and working their butt off rather than somebody that isn't. So I kind of understand why Lamela's getting picked over Christian Eriksen in the bigger picture, because that's a player you're going to have to rely on for the next 7 or 8 months to get your points. But we all know that Christian Eriksen, if it's an on-form Christian Eriksen and it's a committed Christian Eriksen, he's a lot better than Eric Lamela, and it's the same with Jan Vertonghen, isn't it? We can look at it from the outside and say Jan Vertonghen makes our strongest side all of the time, but if we don't know what's going on in training, but if there's people there in training that aren't matching the intensity that Pochettino wants, if you just allow that player to get away with it, that soon spreads to everyone else in the squad. And I think that's the problem at the moment. So, there may be our two fantastic players, but I've always said all year, all summer, we see this phrase "back the manager," and so when it comes to it, sometimes you have to back the manager about who's leaving the club and who's playing, and that's the sad way. It's, like I say, it's not just Newcastle. Pochettino's looking at it, probably thinking of the next 35 games beyond Newcastle as well as just Newcastle, and so I'd always side with the manager.
So do you think we should sell Eriksen, or we should keep him and let him go on a free?
I think that's the hard thing, isn't it? Because I think the clubs that Christian Eriksen will agree to move to are the clubs that aren't buying him. So, I mean, let's be fair. If Brighton came in for him, do you think Christian Eriksen would move to Brighton, or would he move to Wolfsburg, or would he move to Nice, or would he move to Sporting Lisbon? He's not going to move to those clubs. So even if those clubs come in with a massive bid, he's not going to go there. So you're kind of stuck to what Eriksen wants. But for me, until his future's settled, I wouldn't be picking him, even though he may be the best player if it's a fully committed Christian Eriksen. And don't get me wrong, I'd love Christian Eriksen to sign a new contract and stay there tomorrow, because I'm a massive Eriksen fan. But at the moment, with the situation you're stuck in, I can kind of understand why Christian Eriksen's not playing. And let's be fair, his performance at Manchester City hardly screamed out to be picked for the next game, did it?
Mm-hmm. I think I speak for a majority of Spurs fans when I say I'm a massive Christian Eriksen fan as well.
Yeah.
But I was at the game, and one of the things I noticed that was just shocking for me was the atmosphere at the stadium. It was poor. Like it was. I mean, the Newcastle fans were singing, "Is this the Emirates?" And there wasn't really a comeback because it was like the Emirates. What do you think? Do you think did you think the atmosphere is bad at stadium, and do you think what can we think can be done to solve that?
Well, I think we used Wembley as an excuse when the atmosphere was really poor at Wembley, and we used to say, "Oh, it's because it's Wembley," and you'd have people leaving with 15 minutes to go to get this mythical last train that you must get from Wembley Park, otherwise you'll be there all night and things like that. And it'll all be different when we go back to Tottenham. But you can see the atmosphere of the West Ham game at the end of last season. As soon as West Ham scored, it's just killed it. And when you look at it and you think the first two games of this season, we've got 4 points, which is actually probably a point more than everyone thought we'd get. Let's be fair, most of us thought we'd get beat at City. So, all right, the performance wasn't great, and it wasn't great against Villa, but you're sitting there with 4 points from 2 games. We've spent some money in the summer. We're off the back of a Champions League final, and the atmosphere should be a lot better than that. And I understand people say, well, at £50, £60, £80, £100, whatever it is, it's up for the players to give us something back to cheer about. But for me, it's when you're going through a bad spell, the only thing fans can affect is the atmosphere at a game, and it's up to us to try and lift that atmosphere. And you don't have to be 2-0 up before you can stand there and sing "Oh, when the Spurs." But the atmosphere Sunday was pretty toxic, wasn't it? And if we lose that next game, I dread to think what the atmosphere will be like going into the Palace game. I think as fans, you have to try and play your part. And I can understand the disappointment. I can understand the frustration. But like I say, the only thing you can do is to try and influence the game in your own way and get behind the team. And when it's just moans and groans, it doesn't. Let's be fair. It doesn't matter what business you're in, anything. If there's that negativity and the moaning and groaning, it's not an enjoyable place to be, is it? And so that spreads to the pitch.
It's very true. But from your perspective, what do you think is the root cause of the atmosphere? Do you
it's hard. The football
coming to get the stadium?
It's hard, isn't it? The football at the moment's not great to watch. League form since February's been poor, but like I say, maybe there's just that sense of entitlement and that sense of we should be competing for the league, and so supporters, as soon as something goes wrong, it just drops off. The Champions. I mean, we should be buzzing. We should be buzzing. We've just been to a Champions League final, and yes, okay, it covered our league form, but you should come out of that Champions League final first proper season in a new stadium. okay, we didn't spend £1 billion in the summer, but we finally went out. We signed players that the manager wanted, and yet I can't understand why there's so much negativity. I can understand frustration. Don't get me wrong, because we want to be playing well, and we know we should be getting a result against Villa comfortably, and we should be able to go to Manchester City and look better than we did. But we're not Bury, are we? We're not Bolton this week, and I don't understand that real negativity that's there. It's that negativity that you look at Tottenham through the 90s and things, and it's a whole lot better today than it was then. But maybe we've just got that sense of frustration that 6 years on, there's still no trophy, and it kind of snowballs. And as soon as one moans, the next one moans, and the next one moans, and we're just kind of stuck in that rut.
Yep, it's true. Just to move on, the event at the start of the week, to look forward into the derby at the end of the derby on Sunday now. But for you now, when you think of the derby, what was your best memory, best match that you think of when you think of the derby?
I think for me, the memories will always go back to that semi-final in '91 and Gazza's free kick. That's got to be the best one. I think my first derby I saw might have been the 5-0 defeat to them on a Boxing Day, which was a pretty painful one with Leon Brady putting one in the top corner. But yeah, probably the best one is that 91 semi-final. And then since then, let's be fair, our record at the Emirates is poor, isn't it? It's one Premier League win in 26 years. So it's time to break that, and we've actually played well there in a few years and still not got the win. The last 2 years, if we're really honest, we've been run out of town there in the Premier League, haven't we? They've been far more up for it than we have. Even when you go back to Harry Redknapp, the 5-2 game, they blitzed us in that second half, didn't they? And it's time to put in a performance at the Emirates that says, come on, we're Tottenham and we have become the slightly better side. But it'll be a shame if we've lost that better period than them and still haven't been able to get a win at the Emirates in that time.
All right. So to think of the game this week, we're coming into it on a run of pretty bad form, as you mentioned before. From your perspective, do you think that the bad form going into the derby will help us, or do you think it will see us get another battering, a 5-2 or 5-0?
I'd be surprised if it's a battering. I'd be surprised if it's a battering, but we know we've got to lift our performance. That's for sure. We can't be sluggish. It's that slowness of football, and I think going into it, if we write down the team that we want to play, it's very difficult to find 11 names you really want to put on that team sheet with confidence, isn't it, at the moment? There's so many, we'd all like Jan Vertonghen to be back, but do we really think Jan will be back? Is Danny Rose good enough for that derby? His form? Who's going to play at right back? What do we have in the centre of midfield? It's, probably other than Harry Kane, I don't know what other names we're all writing on the team sheet other than, like I say, Harry Kane and Hugo, and then it's put your finger in the air and pick the other 9. It's a problem, and you'd like to be going into it with confidence. I think you always want to go into a big game with confidence, but we're not going into it in that way. And I don't dread it. Don't get me wrong. I never dread going to the Emirates, but the last few years we've gone there and been the favourites, and everyone's been saying, "Oh, Tottenham will blitz Arsenal," and if you pick a joint team, there'll be 11 Spurs players in it. But this has got the feel of a very different one. This has got the feel of a derby of, 5-10 years ago, hasn't it? Where we're going there slightly in feeling the underdog at the moment.
Do you think that might help us though? Because being underdog and in the Champions League run, obviously we're the underdog all the way through. Do you think that maybe being the underdog with Tottenham might help us?
I think derbies you just take as a completely separate. It's a separate game, isn't it? It's a game that you just think, for me, it's always the most important game of the season against them. But I always say we play 36 pre-season fixtures and we play Arsenal twice, and they're the only 2 games that really, really matter to me. And I don't know. I think it's Arsenal's confidence that perhaps has the bigger effects on the game. You know, if they're confident and there seems to be a moment, a little bit of a buzz around them that hasn't been there for a couple of years, and I think does that transpire with their intensity? And if we're off it and we're not confident and we don't match their intensity, then it will be a difficult afternoon. That's for sure. We just have to find some way to get some intensity in that performance. If we can do that, I think we've got a chance. But if we're like we've been in the first 3 games, it could be a painful afternoon. That's for sure.
Prediction? do you think we're going to win? Score prediction?
Oh, this is the game I hate to predict. I hate the whole day. The build up to kickoff when my nerves are all over the place. So I don't know. I'll take a 1-1 now, probably the way that we're going at the moment, and just that feeling of negativity, and take the 1-1, move on to Palace, win that, and then I think our season can start. But like I say, if we don't get that intensity right, then I think it could be a long afternoon for us. Let's say Hugo needs to have a good game.
That's happened.
That's the first thing that needs to happen. Hugo needs to have a good game, and if Hugo has a blinder, then it's not beyond us to get a result there. But we need to see a better performance than we've been putting in. That's for sure.
It's true. The 1-1 is the one that's happened, obviously, for the past few years. That annoying result, we had it last year, the year before. Just to finish, though, the man whose name is in the podcast title, unfortunately, Sol Campbell. How do you describe your opinion on the man?
Oh God, I'm not allowed to swear either, am I? It's I mean, he was a hero to all of us. Let's be fair about it, and he was a fantastic defender at Tottenham. He was at the time when he was in that Spurs side. He was, let's be fair, he was head and shoulders our best player, and it hurt when he left. And I think the circumstances of him leaving is, you know, I think people get confused. They just think he went to Arsenal, and that's why Spurs fans are annoyed. I think, you know, if you were you as a Tottenham fan, it was the lies for the 6 months. It was the constant, I won't go there, I'm a Spurs fan. And it was all those chances that he could have gone somewhere else. And I think it's the disappointment in not just where he went to, but the circumstances of how he went there. But now, I mean, he's just left Macclesfield, hasn't he? And probably, I think Macclesfield was too high for him. Let's say that. Let's just leave it on that note.
Do you think it could happen again, though, with a player going from Arsenal to Spurs, or maybe the other way around?
I think it will. Do you know what? I think it'll happen more. Not necessarily being Spurs and Arsenal. I think there'll be more and more players now start to leave their contracts run down, and the chances of it happening, I think, will go up. And it could be between Man United and Manchester City. It could be Liverpool and Everton. It could be, at Villa and Birmingham. I think more and more players will start to realise why sign a 6-year contract when you can sign for 2 or 3 years and go on a free. So, yeah, I think there'll be definitely movements. But I didn't even like the movements coming this way. I didn't like William Gallas. I didn't like Adebayor. So it's not just going the other way that I don't like.
It's the sad truth of football, I guess, nowadays. So I think that's the end now, I think. Thank you very much for coming on.
No problem, mate. Nice to catch up.
All right. See you again. See you. All right.
Cheers.
So there they were. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is our first video, or if you were listening, it's another podcast. So yeah, that was it. Please subscribe, like the video, follow the podcast on all the socials. They'll be down below. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed.
Sol Campbell is a Judas traitor. See you after the derby.